Brenton Wilkinson has been involved in the thoroughbred horse racing industry for 30 years. After 20 years as an insurance broker for thoroughbred horses, Brenton moved to racing administration in 2002, taking up the role of operations and facilities manager at the SAJC, South Australian Jockey Club. He was appointed by the board as Chief Executive Officer of the SAJC on the 27th of August 2009. He was responsible for convincing trainer Peter Moody to bring his champion mare, Black Caviar, to Adelaide for 2 races. Please welcome Brenton.
Thank you, Dick. I don't know about all you, but that bell, when you're not used to it, just wakes you up in a real hurry. So, Look, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to come and just talk a little bit about the South Australian Jockey Club and the racing industry as a whole. It is a passion of mine. I've been going to the races with my grandpa since I was 3 years of age. He was a bookmaker, or a bagman for Teddy Biggs, a bookmaker back in the mid-60s, and he was a fanatical racing person, as was my grandma, who would go to the races and always liked to back the favourite in the hurdle in the first with 10 quid and put it in a pocket and go home. So it is something I've followed all my life, and I think it has to be a passion, because racing becomes part of your life, because it happens at Morpheville every Saturday. So we race 58 times a year, and if you're going to work in an industry like this, I think your private life is still very important, but it is eaten into somewhat by the activities and the times that we actually work. I thought I'd try and just run through a few basics about racing, but start off with some real cold hard facts. Prior to the election this year, the greyhound racing, thoroughbred racing and harness racing got together and did a report, sorry, just a bit about branding, a report on the size and scope of the racing industry. And it's quite amazing when you consider what is actually involved with racing. It's not just the activities that happen on a Saturday, but it is the stud hands out on the farms. It is the farmers growing the cereal crops and the hay that then gets purchased by the breeding industry. It is the saddlery guy in his shop with his seamstress making jockey silks and leathers and saddles, etc. So it's a massive industry, and it contributes $401.7 million to the economic benefits in South Australia, and that includes tourism for people that come from interstate with their horses when they're racing, through our Adelaide Cup Carnival and our Autumn Racing Carnival. It employs 3,628 people, so it's a massive employer of people within South Australia, and you can't say openly, but a lot of those people are of a limited skill set and find themselves working in the thoroughbred racing industry. 19 million, believe it or not, in GST for government coffers, so it's a massive income for the government as well. 303 million of the monies raised are actually spent within the industry itself, with people buying product off of other people, being your saddlery, being your horses, being the feed, and also the tourism that comes with it. There's a massive amount of volunteers over the 3 codes involved, being 1,240 people, and there's an amazing amount of 6,750 races at 773 race meetings across South Australia. But as I said, that is for all 3 codes, not just the thoroughbreds. In the last 12 months, more than 500,000 people attended race meetings across South Australia, so it is a widely sought over activity, and in total numbers it's second to the AFL in South Australia for attendances. The thoroughbred racing industry is only one part of that, but it's approximately 70% of the whole racing industry in South Australia, and racing in South Australia is primarily funded by revenue out of the South Australian TAB. So monies that are wagered on the product of racing, the TAB has a legal responsibility to return a third of the profits of that back to the racing industry to fund itself. So it is good to see that people that actually have a bet with the TAB, so anyone in this room, if you bet with a corporate bookmaker, please consider going back to the TAB, because it actually contributes to the funding of racing in South Australia. And out of all that, you break down, and the South Australian Jockey Club is only 65% of the thoroughbred racing industry. So we're still a major player in South Australia for the size of racing, but we're a smaller part of the fish when you look at the big pie. We only host 480 races a day at 58 race meetings in the current year. A few years ago we'd race 69 times a year, but since we've done some rationalisation and we have 2 racing surfaces at Morphettville, we have shifted some of our midweek meetings to the provincials. We have 1,820 members, which doesn't sound a lot, but at the moment it's the most we've had since our scandalous vote rigging scandal back in 2008. Our annual revenue is about 21.6 million, and that excludes prize money, because Thoroughbred Racing SA is our principal authority, and the prize money comes direct to owners of horses, as Warren would attribute, from them, rather than sending it to the clubs and handing it on. So they become the cash cow in relation to prize money distribution. Out of our amount of revenue, racing's about 6.2 million of it. Hospitality is a big part of our business. We do a lot of what's happening here at Adelaide Oval on race days and non-race days. That's 7.1 million. And our commercial operations being our 2 gaming venues, being at Morphettville Junction on the Anzac Highway, and we still have a venue trading at the moment in the grandstand at the Old Cheltenham Racecourse. So that's about a third if you look at is where we get our revenue streams from. So it's important to highlight that racing is our core product, and in our constitution we are a club to host and promote racing, but there's a lot more depth to the South Australian Jockey Club than that. The sad thing is, once you take all the costs of hosting racing and running our business, last year we had a deficit of 1.55 million before we had depreciation. I regularly get asked, why did you want to sell Cheltenham? I didn't want to sell Cheltenham. It's the only track I could back winners at. Certain style of horse could win there and I could normally go home making money. But we had to rationalise, and in South Australia the racing industry has probably done that poorly, but the SAJC took the lead hand and decided it was time to rationalise, and the theory was to sell Cheltenham Racecourse and develop Victoria Park jointly with Clipsal V8s and create another good function centre in the parklands, as has been done here with this marvellous stadium here at Adelaide Oval. And that way we would keep Morphettville as our primary quarters. Unfortunately, during that period of time, the council decided to increase our rent at Victoria Park from $54,000 a year to $300,000 a year, and reduce the amount of meetings that we could host there from 33 to 11. So we're technically going to be 30 grand in the poo before we started racing on a Saturday. So it was not viable for us to continue there, especially with the condition that the facilities were in at Victoria Park. However, we were always able to sell about $28,000 worth of alcohol out of a caravan through the summer months on a race day when people would walk in from the East Park lanes. Following selling Cheltenham, our previous CEO, who was probably fairly noteworthy in the paper during his later time as at the SAJC, helped the board structure a deal to sell Cheltenham through a land facilitation agreement, and instead of around $45 million, we achieved $85 million for the sale of that property. And we're about to receive our next $15 million on Friday, which is the final payment through that process. The $85 million has been invested in the last 15 back into development with some very favourable interest rates to the SAJC. So that investment has actually netted us $5.7 million in the last financial year. Hence we're able to then turn our operations into a surplus rather than the failures that we're having just from the running of our operations. The biggest cost that we face is that even though we host racing, there is a principal racing authority in every state, and our principal racing authority is Thoroughbred Racing SA. It's a massive cost to maintain the racing surfaces, the training surfaces, as we have horses trained there 6 days a week, with approximately through summer 330 horses a morning work at Morphettville, and in winter at the moment we've got about 267 to be exact yesterday, working in the morning. So the tracks all get used for race day as well as non-race day, and through the winter months, of course, especially with the weather we're having at the moment, there is major works that have to be done to keep the surfaces up and suitable for racing. We as a business had to then look a lot harder outside of the core product of racing, because people will come along to event days, and the younger generations nowadays, and I'm talking the 25s to 35s, so well below my age, they like to go and be comfortable at the races, they want to eat, they want to have a drink, they want to be in a party type atmosphere or a fun type area. So on those days we can attract people along to the races. At our day-to-day meetings, like last Saturday, we had a whole 996 people at the races, of which 340 of them left at 2:30 to come here to go to the football. But at least we're getting those people come prior to coming to the football, which is a change for South Australia. We're not a big state for people wanting to go to 2 events in a day. So what we're focusing now is that racing at 58 times a year basically leaves us with 300 days a year that we need to use our assets better, and that is why we are growing our non-race day activity, trying to create things. We do a lot of weddings. Last year we did 74 weddings, and we've just recently broken into the Greek and Italian weddings in our big pavilion, which seats 600 people, and most of those have attendances around 500, which is a great little event to have. Conferencing, event and hospitality, that's the future for sporting organisations, and recently our chairman went to Hong Kong for the Asian Racing Conference, and coming back from there, the message worldwide is that all racing facilities, as are a lot of sporting organisations, are not making their income from their core product. A lot of them are diversifying and looking at other ways of bringing money in. We've got that nest egg now of $50 million invested for the long-term financial viability of the club, but we are looking at alternatives on what to invest that in outside of racing that can have a more stable, regular return. Stock market can be a bit dodgy, but in the last 3 years we've been averaging about 13.92%, which has been outstanding. Well, whoops, sorry. Pressed it too hard. Thought we'd run through a little bit of history briefly. A lot of people ask how long has racing been happening in South Australia. Well, it started back in about 1832 with the first race meeting conducted at Theberton. Believe it or not, there was a racecourse at Theberton, and if you drive through Theberton you'll see a lot of streets that have the names of racing related to it. But the first one at Morpheville was in 1875. So Sir John Morford and a group of people got together in the hotel there at the time, which is now the Morford Arms, decided to buy a parcel of land and created a racecourse and handed it over to the Jockey Club later on. In 1916 it was used extensively for the war contingent, with the military taking occupancy of it, and also the Light Horse Brigade. So it's fantastic to see a part of history at Morpheville not just being horse racing and utilised for other things for the benefit of Australia. In 1930, the legendary Far Lap raced at Morpheville, came down to the races from Victoria Park where it was stabled and trained in the tram. So the tram had a horse box on the back of it, came down and won the King's Cup at Morpheville. So we had our little slice of history from there. And one of the magnificent things about our membership at the moment, we have a lady who's a member called Molly Roti, and she's 102. So until this year, she's driven herself to the races every Saturday, and she used to pick up her old girlfriends who were in their 80s on the way down there, have a compulsory couple of glasses of red during the afternoon, and then drop them home on the way. So Molly's had the privilege of seeing Far Lap, Tulloch, Takeover Target and Black Caviar, and it's just an outstanding achievement, and she looks like she's about 80, so she's in amazing nick. 1954, the Royals came out to Morpheville, which was fantastic. We tried to see if we could get them recently when they were in Australia, but unfortunately it wasn't on a race day, and TRSA wouldn't program a meeting for us to try and attract them here. But it's great to have history of the Royals there with the Royal Brigade. The Queen, who of course looks slightly younger there than she did at the time, being greeted and cared for by the board at the time. Then we go to 1961 when Tulloch, trained by Tommy Smith, came down and raced at Cheltenham and won and became the highest stakes earner in Australia at that point in time, and created history. There was 34,000 people at Cheltenham the day Tulloch broke that record, which was an outstanding attendance. In 1976, the three clubs in South Australia decided it's time to start looking at rationalisation. There was the Adelaide Racing Club, being Victoria Park, the Cheltenham Racing Club, being Port Adelaide Racing Club at Cheltenham, and the South Australian Jockey Club at Morpheville, which has become the overriding name for the future of racing. In 1997, Octagonal, after he finished his racing career, trained by John Hawkes, owned by the Inghams, came down here just for an exhibition gala. He hadn't actually raced here at all, but they got 33,000 people turn up at Morpheville to watch a horse stride down the track by himself. And it was outstanding to see everybody just standing in the stand listening to this horse charge down the straight, and he ran his last 600 in the time that he would have run in a race, just to let go and show everyone the best. It was an outstanding day. I wasn't working at the Jockey Club then, but my wife made me go along, and the Inghams bought a heap of pink donuts. So everyone got a pink donut as they went into the course, and an octagonal hat. So the promotion was fantastic. Not long after that, Kylie Minogue appeared at Morpheville and brought along to try and attract crowds back after an Adelaide Cup day. And only 35,000 people turned up to see Kylie Minogue. So she was nearly knocked off by octagonal. Then we get to some of the sad parts of our history, that in 2007 Victoria Park closed. In 2009 Cheltenham was closed following its being sold. And on the last day at Cheltenham, on the 22nd of February 2009, we had 10,054 people at Cheltenham. And that's without having the centre, so it was very, very busy. And the amount of people that came up to us and said, see, you shouldn't close Cheltenham. Everyone's coming to the races. Well, they came to the races because it was the last day and they all wanted to be a part of it. After the last race, people went out on the track with a shovel trying to dig up a piece of the turf to take home and put in a garden as a memento of Victoria Park. But so Cheltenham. Then we get to some of the real exciting times of more recent, that I was able to lure Joe Janiak, the taxi driver from QBN, down to Adelaide with his champion Takeover Target. It's a fabulous story, and I was just talking to Dick about it before, that John Morrissey, a trainer in Sydney, bought the horse for $40,000 as a yearling. He had a little bit of an indiscretion with his stable hand, and his wife decided it was time that they parted company and he had to sell all their horses. And this horse had some leg problems, so the horse got put in a sale, and Joe Janiak went there, liked the horse, had bad legs but liked him, decided to buy him, bought him for $1,250. His bill came and it was $1,375, and he went to pay the bill with $1,250 because that's what he believed he paid for it, but he forgot to allow for GST. So he argued black and blue and threatened to give the horse back, and eventually borrowed the $125 off a mate of his. History prevails. The horse has won $6.48 million, won at Royal Ascot, and was the only horse, and still is the only horse, to have won a Group 1 race in every state of Australia. The only way we attracted him down here was I had to send a race page to him which showed what the weights for the Goodwood race were, because they'd been changed 2 years prior to set weights and penalties, which meant a good horse that had won several Group 1 races wouldn't carry more than 58.5 kilos in the race. I offered to scan and email it to him. He didn't have a computer. I offered to fax a copy of it to him. Didn't have access to a fax machine, so I had to post the page to him so that he would come and have a look at it. And the only thing that really made him come down here was that he thought that it was appropriate that his horse deserved to hold a title of winning a Group 1 race in every state of Australia. So that's what won for him. We offered to charter a float to drive it down, because there's no flying of horses within Australia on domestic airlines. It's not allowed. However, you can fly them in from overseas, and if you can arrange a flight that piggybacks down to another state on an international flight, you can then do that. So we offered to charter a float. He turned around and said, that's going to cost you about 15 grand. I said, yeah, no, Joe, happy with that. We'll do that just to get your horse down here. He said, well, give me 10 and I'll drive him down myself. So we proceeded to do that. I'm getting worried about this chicken. How are we going to get on? So on the night before, at about 6 o'clock, I was home relaxing, having a beer, thinking the big day's about to happen tomorrow. We were expecting a crowd, which for us in Goodwood Day of 10,000 is about 3 times a normal crowd. And I get the phone call from Joe saying, the horse is lame. I think I have to scratch him. So I said, well, whatever vet you want, let us know. We need the horse to race. Worst come to worst, even if he is lame and the vet say he can't race, at least bring him over so people can come and see him. Because we had a lot of people that had already bought tickets from the country, the Riverland, wanted to come down with the kids to show them Takeover Target, because he was a bit of a pin-up horse at the time because of the rags to riches story surrounding him. So they worked on him all night, got the phone call at 5 in the morning, said, we're going to run him. So that was great news. So we go across to the track, and he was like a film star. Every time he moved to the parade ring, all the crowd would follow him. He'd move back. The amount of pictures the horse had taken with all kids, with grandparents, parents and their kids, was outstanding, and Joe was great to present the horse all day for us. The horse subsequently won, day was over, everyone had a great day, superb. Said to Joe, I'll buy you a bottle of scotch, I'll come down and see you afterwards at your hotel. So I bought him a nice bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. Went down, thought he might like to take that home and have a sip on it from time to time at home, and he asked me if we could trade it in for a carton of Johnny Walker Red. Hence I went back to the Morphin Arms and got him a carton of Johnny Walker Red. And he actually stayed in the Morphin Arms Hotel because the extra money that we were happy to pay to have him at the Grand, he would prefer to have that for punting money. So he was a real character, Joe was, and we proceeded to drink a bottle and a half of that night before I escaped and got home to my wife in a very ordinary state. So it was an amazing feat in South Australia to get a horse like that here. Everyone sort of rates us as the last of the 4 big states in racing, and we are. We know our place, and we're happy to be in that place and have our product on Saturday. Then, still seems like yesterday, Black Caviar was unbeaten. Every time she stepped out, she just took every challenge that was put before her. A year before she appeared in Adelaide, I said to, and I think some of you know my ex-chairman here, David Peacock, my eccentric, outspoken, loud, boisterous chairman who you go to a meeting with and halfway through you just throw your papers up in the air and think, got no idea what's going on, but we always seem to achieve what we're trying to do. But David was chairman. I said, David, I'll get Black Caviar next year, because Peter had already been interviewed about going to England that year. And he said, no, we'll leave it till next year so I can plan her program properly. Well, the two races she raced in Adelaide were the Sporting Bet Classic, which is the old Robert Sangster Stakes, and the Goodwood, which Takeover Target won. Both have set weights, so she was going to get 56.5 kilos in the Sporting Bet Classic and 57 kilos in the Goodwood. So she's weighted beautifully in both of those races. Peacock's comment was, I won't say all the words because there's ladies, you're an idiot. You can imagine what the others were that preceded it. From that day, I just started touching base. So my previous career as an insurance broker, I didn't actually do insurance for horses that Peter Moody bought for his owners, but I had horses insured with Peter Moody as a trainer for people that I did insurance for. So I knew a little bit of the man, but not a lot. So we worked through the whole process, got to a stage where he rang us on a strategy day and interrupted me from a board strategy meeting and said, Brenton, we're going to come. All being well with the horse, we'll come. I think your strategy's fixed. Beautiful. Don't tell anyone. How can you not tell anyone that Black Caviar might be coming to South Australia? So then I'm getting very agitated because we needed to spend a lot of money to host a horse like Black Caviar at Morphettville. The expectation was that we might get 15, maybe 20,000 people turn up at Morphettville, with average crowds for those races around 3,000. So we thought we might get 5 times that. So we wanted to make sure that there was plenty of marquees, plenty of screens up. If people couldn't see, they could see plenty of vision. Set up plenty of bars, set up plenty of food outlets, and make it a real family-friendly oriented day. And since we stopped using the centre of the course for patrons, we were limited with an attendance on staff of 30,000 people. So the 2 times she appeared at Morphettville, she was sold out. The first event, we were sold out at 30,000, 8 working days out from the event, which was outstanding, which made it easy on the day. You just collect tickets off them as they come through the gate. The only thing, 30,000 included children, so we actually had 8,500 children go that day. So I made the decision and convinced the board to leave our gate entry fee at $10 a head, thinking 30,000 people at $10 a head, quite a lot of money, which backfired a little bit. The people came along, had a fantastic day. Peter Moody was outstanding. He went to a breakfast on the Saturday morning at our Morphettville Junction. One lady asked him to sign a race book. He proceeded to sign 600 race books that morning before he went across to the track. He was just so approachable, walked through the crowd with me and had his picture taken with hundreds and hundreds of kids on the day. Nervous as hell, sucking away on his cigarettes and rolling the coin, which you've probably seen on the news, between his fingers, which he did as a ritual every time she raced. Just before he confirmed that she was definitely coming, it was the Thursday before Easter. And I thought, I'm getting tired of not getting an answer. He's still taking my call once a week, but I'm not getting an answer. So I read an article where Peter Moody said that 3 best things in his life are sucking on a banger, his Benson Hedges Special Mild, drinking a 4X stubby, and having his big fat tummy stroked by a tall, long, blonde, leggy woman. So I thought, well, I can deal with a couple of those matters. So I rang up the concierge at the Crown Plaza Hotel, which from my days I knew he stayed when he was in Sydney for the horse yearling sales over Easter. And the guy said, I can't go and buy them for you, Mr. Wilkinson, but if you can buy them over the phone, I'll be more than happy to go and pick them up. So I rang the bottle shop around the corner from the Crown Plaza at Coogee Beach, and deal was done. Concierge went and got it. For all I know, he could have taken them home and had a good party that night, but he delivered them and rang me back and said, I'll put them in the fridge so they're cold, and I left a note on it saying, ring Brenton Wilkinson, thought you might not need this after a day inspecting yearlings. So the next morning he rang me up and said, you're a dick. He said, we're coming. He said, as long as she's fit. And I said, fit? You're going to be a bit tight for the Sangster. He said, oh, as long as she's 80% fit, she'll beat all them, it won't matter. So hence, she came, and that's how the story unfolded. We had 30,000 people, as I said, and they were crammed into Morphettville. We put marquee roofs up, not to capitalise on selling people as bums on seats for hospitality and functions, but just to make sure that we had shade if it was sunny, or protection from the weather in case it was wet. We could have raped and pillaged and filled it with corporates all the way down, but we wanted South Australian public to have an opportunity to see a champion. People will go to any sporting activity, whether it be AFL, baseball, tennis. If a legend, a true legend or a true sporting champion is going to be present, people will come. And all the people that came on these days were well behaved. We had not one issue with security. We didn't have any people complain that they couldn't see. We didn't have anyone complain about behaviours or being able to get a drink or anything like that. So we put on what we believe were two of the best days, and Peter Moody, in most of his talks around the place, still rate the two experiences at Morphettville as the best he went to, the way we managed the media, the way that we helped him get through that event, because it's very stressful for him. The thing I didn't think of on the first appearance of Black Caviar, of course, was, as CEO, I'm expected to write a speech. So I had to write a speech for a winning, I had to write a speech for a losing. I had to be prepared for a speech in case she broke down and would never race again. And then I had to write the speech that everyone would hate to think of is if she broke down and had to be put down. So you just had to be prepared for everything. And while the race was on, I couldn't talk, couldn't breathe, and when it was over, felt quite emotional. Sad thing was ABC was standing right alongside me and did an interview which they wouldn't give back, which was full of tears and blubber and excitement that the horse A had finished, B had won, and our unbeaten streak had continued on. Once she won the race, she was brought back from the 300 metre mark along the straight so that all the crowd could get a real good close-up look of her. The horse loves her. Her ears are pricked when she's coming near the crowd. She just loves the people, and she knows that she was better than the average bear. And the amount of people that commented and wrote to us thanking us for the way we paraded the horse back in front of them all was outstanding, and that continued on at other events that she raced at. She was just an amazing individual. She was 680 kilograms of horse, which is about 140 more than the average size horse. Her stride in full work was 9.6 metres. So when she was cruising along at 60 k's, 9.6 metres, which is 40% larger than the stride of the average racehorse. So that's why she always looked effortless in a racing, because she'd get up to cruising speed and just throw those big legs out and stride along. Luke Nolan, of course, rode her at every start apart from two, and had that success. It was an outstanding period of time for the SAJC. It made us understand that Morphettville can be put back on the map. People will come. We have to create the sexy, comfortable feel that people want to experience. So we've got some real challenging times ahead. This slide's a picture of this year's Adelaide Cup. So Adelaide Cup, looks like there's a massive crowd there. We borrowed shade, well not borrowed, hired shade structures from Darwin, which they use up there for the Darwin Cup. So these brought a lot of people to the front of the course. We had 10,040 people at the Adelaide Cup this year in March, and you're probably aware that we're now looking to put the Cup back to May because of the competition in Mad March. But we actually make as much money on an Adelaide Cup day with 10,000 people in March as we do with 22,000 people in May. People are up and about, looking to book into hospitality areas, looking to spend some money, even if they've run out of money from Christmas time. And that's part of the process that we're working on at the moment for the Jockey Club. So we've got some real challenging times ahead, and to make sure that we adapt and move with our business. The day of the 5-hour drink package on a race day, in my opinion, is gone. Responsible drinking and responsible service of alcohol is prohibiting that. And if a couple want to come along to Adelaide Cup Day in our Upper Tapestry Pavilion at $300 a head, which is your 5-course meal and 5-hour drink package, there's $600, cab there and back, 60, 50, 70, depending where you live. That's a very expensive day and you haven't even had a bet. So we have to move with the times. We've got to focus our business on a lot more than racing. And the Melbourne Racing Club, who we're doing a lot of work with at the moment, they own 13 gaming venues. So they're making $20 odd million a year revenue outside of racing to underpin their budgeted losses in racing of $6 million. So we've introduced our branding. It's all about being new and fresh. I didn't like the squirrely things. I thought they looked a bit puffy to me. But the marketing people say that it works. The feedback we've got from everyone, including Sky Channel, is it's modern, fresh, new, exciting. That's great. You walk through the door, then the facilities are still a bit tired. We've fully repainted through, we've just carpeted through, and now it's a matter of filling it with furniture. But everything we do at Morphettville, it doesn't cost $5,000, it doesn't cost $10,000, it costs hundreds or $200,000 because of the size of the venue. But I'm passionate, I see the dream, I believe it's a great opportunity for racing in South Australia, and we're really passionate about Morphettville being the real look and feel. It'll never be Flemington, but we need to be the Flemington in South Australia. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brenton. I think we've probably got time for one question. Barbara?
As a member and enjoying the hospitality with some friends last Saturday, including my friend Kay,
Yes.
congratulations on your hospitality there. One thing you didn't mention, I'm passionate about training, and I do that with Quality Training College.
Yes.
All our students, which people wouldn't know, about 60 every week are in your kitchens.
Yes.
And we thank you for doing that, even though we do have to pay you.
Yes, no, it's fantastic, and
And
thank
about
you for...
156 international students.
Yes, no, it's been a great success, and the great thing from our point of view is not just the rent that they pay for using the kitchens, but when we do have our big days, we have access to all these people that have been trained in hospitality, trained in the actual cooking and the presentation of food, because on Adelaide Cup Day this year we fed 4,850 people at seated functions. So without the support of quality staffing, we really struggle to be able to deliver on expectation on those days.
Terrific. Great talk, and thank you very much. On behalf of the club, Brenton, I'd like to present you with this coffee table magazine for your office, and tells you about road trip. Maybe you might like to join sometime. Cheers.
Thank you very much.